Can't I even eat my lunch in peace, Laura? I just want one more chance to talk you out of making a huge mistake, Dave. If you continue down this stupid path— Dave interrupted her. Do you really want to air our dirty laundry in public, Laura? Do the dozen or so people sitting within earshot really need to know our business? I don't care who can hear us, Dave. We could have done this quietly in my attorney's office many times over the last 6 months, but no. You refused, being so petulant and stubborn. And why the hell shouldn't I be mad at you for what you did to me? 12 years we were married, 12 fucking years. And then I find out you never loved me. I was just a convenient father to our 2 children, oh, and a source of funds. Let's not forget that, Dave snorted. Let's just call me Dave Bank. Laura left that spunky comment unanswered. After all, it was true, and she was human enough not to be proud of that fact. In the silence that followed, both parties thought to themselves. Dave's thoughts centered on the unspeakable nightmare his once happy life had become. One day he was sent home from work on sick leave just before lunch. Seeing Karen, Laura's friend, Karen's car in the driveway made him feel even worse. The woman never seemed to know when it was time to leave. Entering the house, he was greeted by the sounds of grunts and groans coming from upstairs. As he climbed the stairs, he saw Karen having a squealing Laura in their marital bed. Shock rendered him speechless for a moment or two. The silence didn't last long, and then he began to vent his rage only to be asked to wait downstairs by a clearly unrepentant but looking sad Laura and a smug Karen. I still find it hard to believe what you told me that day, Laura, that you had loved Karen since college and she was your only real soulmate. But you wanted children and needed someone to support you and them. You wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and as you very kindly let me know, fucking Karen needed to supplement her meager income. God, I felt like such an asshole for not noticing that most of my hard-earned paycheck was going to support your girlfriend. You never loved me, did you, Laura? I was just a paternity donor and food stamps, wasn't I? No, don't just nod the hell off. Admit it. Make your own choices. I want you to look me in the eye and say it. Okay, Dave, I admit it. I only loved Karen. I only pursued you to have kids. You were the best candidate. The best candidate? You had your sights set on me? Who the hell were the other candidates? Dave muttered. Keith Davenport and Eric Jensen. Dave was stunned at how prosaic Laura was being. Keith? Eric? So why didn't you pick one of them? Why me? Keith and Eric were players. You're not. You've always been an honest and trusting guy, the kind of guy they say, you see what you see. You get what you get. Karen thought since you're so trusting, it'd be easier for us to get away with our deception. Well, she was right about that, Dave muttered sourly. Meet Dave, a con artist's dream. Or in your case, a con artist's dream. Yeah, it was. Look, I'm not particularly proud of what we've done, but you have to remember that when we got married, the world was a different place. Lesbians cohabiting and having children was strongly frowned upon. Dave raised an eyebrow, his expression sarcastic. Okay, I'll admit it. It wasn't just about society and wanting children. I wanted you to be able to provide me with a lifestyle that neither Karen nor I could ever afford. Laura lowered her eyes in shame. Dave raised his head in anger. What kind of imitator did you have? You always told me it could only be a way out. Laura blushed with embarrassment. Karen was punishing me, for what the hell? For sleeping with you the previous night. It was our anniversary, remember? She was jealous every time I slept with you. If you want to know the truth, I lied to her too, saying that you and I never made love. But I couldn't do that to you honestly. It was bad enough that you didn't have the life you thought you had. Turning you into a eunuch was just unbearable for my conscience. So I screwed over Karen. I was so tired that day that I went straight back to bed after taking the kids to school. Karen walked in and smelled that we had sex. She threw me over her knee and then, did what you saw. So, Karen had a key to our house? Yeah. And how often did she come by? Honestly, not that often, Dave. I went over to her house almost every day. Tumbling around in bed? Laura sighed. No, making love, Dave. In an apartment I was paying for without knowing it? Yes, Dave. Laura lowered her eyes. Coming face to face with all her actions in this way was very embarrassing. Deep down, she had always thought of herself as a decent person, trapped in her behavior by a society that didn't know what minorities like her and Karen were subjected to on a daily basis. So you never really loved me, Laura? Not even in the beginning? No, sorry, Dave. I'm a lesbian. I love Karen. Like you, Dave, and I have a lot of respect for you. But I'm sorry, I could never love you. Something in the expression on Dave's face, the cold fury in his eyes, made her twist the knife a little more. At first, I actually hated sex. It made me want to choke. I probably deserved an Oscar for my acting, but after a couple years, I stopped paying attention. As if regretting her barb, she threw him a bone. Sometimes when you pounced on me, I could pretend it was Karen, and a few times I even came close to finishing. Respect, huh? Our whole damn life was just a scam orchestrated by you and your carpet-eating, meat-eating buddy. Dave allowed himself to savor the flash of anger in Laura's eyes at his use of the derogatory term. If it was fucking respect, I'd hate to see what disrespect looked like. Despite her anger, Laura took her eyes off Dave, but that didn't stop him. He continued. So like your supposed love, all your sighs were fake? Yes, Dave. And all those times you shut me down for weeks or months, pretending you had a yeast infection or some other mysterious illness? I'm sorry, Dave. Karen was jealous. You're unbelievable, Laura. That was the final insult to Laura. Yes, she felt guilty as hell, but her anger, which had been simmering throughout their conversation, flared up again like a tidal wave. Just shut the hell up, Dave. Court resumes in less than 15 minutes, and I want to get a message to your stupid head before we have to go back. Dave threw up his hands in surrender, forgetting his lunch. So what do you want, Laura? I want things to go back to the way they've always been, Dave. Normal, me going back to the house and turning a blind eye to you having Karen, is that normal? Pretending in front of our sons that we have a normal marriage just like other parents? Where their old man gets a pity party now and then? Well, no, Dave. Now that you know, we'll stop pretending I like heterosexual sex. You can move into the spare room and Karen can move in with me. No way in hell, Laura. What kind of wuss do you take me for? You don't have a choice, Dave. What's that joke you always tell? Oh, that's right. If you've got a mothball in one hand and a mothball in the other, what have you got? A bloody big moth that will do whatever you tell it to do. That's you, Dave. You have no choice at all. Laura smiled. That wasn't nice. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. You have exactly two choices. Live a normal life, well, almost normal. Live with your kids. I'll be banned, but everything else will be exactly the same as before. Or march down the road to the courthouse, make an ass of yourself, and see how it ends. Laura didn't wait for Dave to answer. We got Judge Reynolds for crying out loud. Karen says he's been working there for 20 years and he's got a collection of male organs on his office wall so big you can barely fit through the door. He's never once in his entire career sided with the husband, no matter what the wife did. He'll give me the house and you'll pay all the utilities. He's going to make you put me on your insurance and you're going to pay all the deductibles. And I'll tell you right now, Dave, they're going to be very painful. I've never worked, so he's going to assign me child support that will equal the GDP of a third world country, and all the while you'll be living in a shoebox at the county dump, wishing you had enough money to afford macaroni and cheese. By now, Laura's face was red with anger. Dave bowed his head, looking down at the table, a picture of defeat. Glancing at her watch, Laura decided to play her ace. What about your boys, Dave? Your precious sons? You'll be allowed to see them for one weekend a month as the court decides. But you know what, Dave? They'll be cheering that weekend, or playing soccer, or any of 1,000 other reasons I feel it my duty to invent. Laura stopped and took a couple of deep breaths before continuing. And throughout your destruction, Dave, I'll be sleeping with Karen in what used to be your bed, while you can't even afford a date with your right hand. Come on, Dave. Be reasonable. I have a lawyer making $3 grand a day. You represent yourself. Why completely screw up your life? Why, when we can go back to almost exactly where we were? Nothing will be particularly different. Dave lifted his head, his eyes sparkling. Nothing but a life with a complete lack of pride. I won't be able to look my sons in the eye. He stopped and shook his head. Tell me, Laura, you remind me you never worked. Even when the boys were old enough to go to school and I asked you to look for work and help with the bills, you never did. Was that your plan all along? To put yourself in an advantageous position in case I ever found out your dirty little secret and you needed the leverage that dysfunctional spouses get in divorce courts? Yeah, Karen suggested it. Besides, that's the afternoon we saw her. Ah, the penny's dropping. So that's why she only worked as a waitress in the evenings, so that all day, every day, she could spend time with you while I busted my ass supporting my family and paying for her apartment, which she couldn't afford on minimum wage and tips. Look on the bright side, Dave. If she moved in with us, it would save you a lot of money. Laura glanced at her watch, but it was Dave who spoke next. Why do you want to stay married, Laura? Because boys need a father, Dave. Then, as a belated thought, and I don't want to see you destitute and devastated, Dave. You're a good man. You don't deserve the shitstorm that's gonna come down on you. So it has nothing to do with the boys refusing to stay in their own house when they have that slutty girlfriend sleep over? They're staying at Mom and Dad's. Did you really think I didn't know, Laura? Or is it that you quickly lose all your friends who abandon you when your disgusting behavior becomes known? Does it have anything to do with the fact that our priest asked you not to come on Sundays? Does any of this sound familiar, Laura? Laura just shrugged and looked at her watch again. It was time to go. What do you say, Dave? I say you go. I'll see you across the street. Laura sighed disappointedly and left. The divorce hearing ended 47 minutes later and went almost exactly as Laura had imagined. Judge Reynolds ranted about husbands who refused to participate in counseling and how non-working mothers were saints to be cherished and protected from evil husbands who coddled outdated concepts like fidelity. Karen was jubilant when child support was awarded. It was even higher than Laura's attorney had predicted. Although Laura was a little sad, Dave really was a good guy. It wasn't his fault. She was already thinking about not cashing a couple of checks so Dave could stand up for her to the kids and maybe pass on the best friends she'd lost. She looked over, expecting to see the look of devastation on her ex-husband's face. Instead, she saw what? Pity? Why would he feel sorry for her? It should have been the other way around. And then she heard a voice behind her. Mrs. Laura Brown, née Thompson? Laura turned around and saw two uniformed state troopers standing there. Yes, officers. You are under arrest for fraud and violations of Sections 257A and 258 of the State Penal Code, in that you fraudulently obtained a benefit by fraudulent means. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to counsel. These words were interrupted by Karen, who stormed in from the public gallery. What the hell kind of benefit did she get? A second police officer spoke up. Child support, free housing, just to name a few. Are you Karen Smith? At that moment, Karen rushed toward the door. Epilogue. Hi, this is Dave. I feel like you should know me, and I'm sure I know some of you. The memory of the bailiff, alarmed by the shouting police officers, grabbing Karen as she ran through the courtroom door, still brings a smile to my face. The fact that she crashed head first into the heavy oak wall as his arms wrapped around her ankles was just a bonus. Satisfying my sense of justice, it turns out that while lying and fraud are not crimes in and of themselves, the financial gain from them is. That is what is called fraud. A general category of criminal behavior that involves the use of dishonest or misleading means to gain some unfair advantage or benefit at the expense of others. When I first found out about Laura's, well, I don't have the words to describe her behavior, let's say, life plan, I was, quite understandably, devastated. Overwhelmed by thoughts of my naivety and the thought of losing my sons, I did what any normal guy would do. I got drunk. Then I got lucky. While I was slurring my story to my friend Jono, my story was being listened to by another couple at the bar. Tom and Mike were having a wake for Tom's marriage at the same bar where Jono and I were. Tom's divorce was finalized that day, making him another victim of Judge Reynolds. Tom wanted to hurt someone, and my story gave him an outlet. You see, Tom and Mike are state detectives. Along with Jono, Tom and Mike dragged me home, and the four of us started making plans. Laura and Karen's financial shenanigans were conducted solely with my money. It's all a bit vague and with pretty weak evidence. That's why we needed them to win the divorce case. With a clear admission of her intent to defraud me, recorded by Tom sitting at a nearby table in the restaurant with a tape recorder, and Judge Reynolds' ruling, we could prove intent, dishonesty, and benefit. Laura's attorney tried to argue that the recorded conversation was inadmissible. The judge ruled that Laura authorized the recording by saying, "I don't care who hears us, Dave." When Karen regained consciousness, she was handcuffed to a hospital gurney. Laura bailed her out, but Karen escaped almost immediately. Our little clique expected this, and Jono and I took turns watching her apartment. Tom was waiting for her 200 kilometers away at the state border. Karen was detained pending trial. Laura exploded when she heard of Karen's betrayal. Her lover was her main witness and also her supposed other half. Laura stopped supporting Karen, whose legal aid attorney had convinced Karen to plead guilty, which undermined the credibility of Laura's case. The judges in both cases were offended by this undignified behavior, and both women received 5-year sentences. Laura's sentence was extended by 6 months after she hit Karen when they first met in the exercise yard of the Women's Correctional Facility. She wasn't even allowed to attend her second family court hearing, where I got everything back. By the time Laura was released, to my disappointment, 4 years later, I was remarried to Tom's beautiful sister, whom the boys call Mom. I asked them if they wanted to visit their birth mother in prison or if they wanted anything to do with her after her release, but every time I mentioned her, they shrugged their shoulders equally indifferently. Laura became more and more abrupt when she saw them, but always ended up walking away, sobbing and alone. As painful and difficult as all of this was, in the end I was wiser and much happier.